Alrighty. I decided that in addition to doing reviews, I'm also going to do first impressions. Because sometimes I play a game 1 or 2 or 3 times and I want to talk about them, but I'm not ready to do a full review yet because I don't feel like that's fair to the game. So I'm going to do first impressions, which is just when I've played a game a couple times, I want to talk about it, but I'm not ready to do a review. This was a dumb thing to do. I don't know why I started eating chocolate. Because it takes so long to work through. So I'm going to stop eating that for the rest of this video. Alright. I've got a review format that I've been developing, and I'll tweak it and update it as I need to, and as you guys think that it needs to change. But first impressions. Tapestry, Arts and Architecture. This is the expansion that is kind of just now out for Tapestry. I have it to review, and this is going to be a first impressions, and I may do a review video as well. I'm for sure going to probably write a review for the Quackalope blog, so I'll have that up there. But for right now, what is it? This is the newest expansion designed by Jamey Stegmaier with sculpts by Ron Brown, right? Yeah, Ron Brown did the sculpts. Art by Andrew Bosley. Oh, and then Mike Young also helped with the design in addition to Jamey. So what this does is this enhances Tapestry from a advancement track perspective, a civilization map perspective, a capital city map perspective, and then also tech cards, tapestry cards, all of that stuff. So if you don't know what Tapestry is, it is a civilization or tech tree, advancement tree track building game where you start off with a player map and income buildings related to 4 different resources, and you get a capital city map where you essentially are trying to complete rows and columns and also 3x3 9 square sections. Those give you points when you get rows and columns, and they give you resources when you get the 9 squares all filled out in each of those into smaller sections. And the income buildings on your map go there and fill up spots on your capital city. And if you get any landmarks from beating other players up the tracks, those take up larger amounts of space, and larger amounts of space are then filled on your capital city map. You also have asymmetric civilizations, which give you different powers, different abilities that you are able to augment your advancement track movement, your resource use, and sometimes give you additional powers or abilities that you're able to activate at some point during the game. And the process of the game works where you have a certain amount of resources and you incrementally use them to go up these tracks. The further you go up the tracks, the more resources they take. And when you run out of resources, based off of the amount of income buildings you've taken off and how your civilization works, based on those 2 things and sometimes the cards that you have and the rows and columns you filled out, you get points and you get more resources. So as the game goes on and you do these income phases, you'll get more resources to use more times to go up the advancement tracks more. You have science, you have military, you have exploration, and you have technology. And those are the 4 main ones. And Arts and Architecture gives a new one. It gives Arts and Architecture, which is, so it gives you the Arts track, which you are able to go up. And then Architecture is specifically because it gives you additional tapestry cards, or not tapestry cards, landmarks that you can use. And so it advances that, but it also does a couple of unique things with the capital city mats. Typically, those are just different shapes with certain negated, impassable sections that make it easier or harder for you to close off sections or fit landmarks in. I'm talking so fast that I'm like burping up air. That's weird. So, The other thing that it adds is these capital city mats, which are unique. They each have a completely different style and new scoring or additional ability objectives that are unique to what the traditional mats do in Tapestry. Typically, it's just fill out 3x3 9 grid squares, or 9 square grids, and then also fill out rows and columns. And now it's maybe you have islands surrounded by lines of water, and each island gives you points. Or maybe it's a completely different structure that you're trying to work around with different, cacti or other desert aspects. So you've got these capital city mats that are completely different from what you typically encounter in the base game, which makes it unique. And then you've got the arch track, which influences some of the other tracks a little bit, but also introduces these things called masterpiece cards, which give you additional income turn bonuses. So the amount of resources and stuff you're able to collect during your income turn are boosted by these masterpiece cards. And then you've got some more civilizations, which just increases the asymmetry and the variability of the game, because the more civilizations you have, the more pairings you can do with your capital city mats, and then also just the way that you approach the game strategically. And then you've got landmarks, tapestry cards, tech cards, which kind of just enhance or add on to the decks that already exist in the base game. That's a really long-winded synopsis of that, but what it does is kind of, I almost answered all of that, but I'm just going to do it again. Timestamp. What does this do? This adds on or builds on to what exists in Tapestry already. It adds on to the foundation. And then it also expands the possibilities in several different new directions. It gives you different types of advanced capital city maps, which give players new things to think about beyond just, I'm going to stick this building here. Now there are more decisions to make regarding why you would do that and where you might choose to do it. The arch track adds on a 5th track to the board, which is a pretty impressive or major change, especially at higher player counts. I typically play Tapestry at 2 players with my wife, but at higher player counts, which I'm interested in trying it at those, the more players that are competing, they're each competing for the same number of tracks, of like finite advancement tracks. So if there's 4 and you have 4 or 5 players, then you're competing over a smaller amount. But you add a new track in, and it gives players the opportunity to compete or not compete in different tracks now. Because the faster you move up the track, the more likely you are to unlock those landmarks, which help in your capital city, and then also are just a bonus that you're going to be able to make use of that other players won't. And there are certain tracks that the faster you get up them, the more able you are to take advantage of the benefits, more so than anybody else that are, your opponents. So gives you a new track, gives you new thoughts to do with the capital city, and then also it increases the variability of the game just from the base amount, because the more civilizations you have, the more unique game experiences you can count on, because you're using people that you haven't used before, or there are combinations that crop up between all of the players that you normally don't see. So lots of variability and new depth. How does it do it? It does it through not really adding any other mechanics. The mechanics of the game stay the same. There's just an additional track, so it increases decision making, but it doesn't increase complexity in terms of trying to understand a new concept to the game. For example, Lords of Waterdeep has the expansion Scoundrels of Skullport, which adds a lot of depth to the game, but it also increases complexity because it introduces a new mechanic, the corruption mechanic, where you take skulls that are negative points at the end of the game for increased or enhanced turns that give you more resources. This doesn't really increase complexity. It just gives you more depth. There's a little bit of complexity in terms of understanding the individual rules of some of those advanced city tiles or capital city mats, and then also which masterpiece cards you might want to do. But those work within the framework. They exist within the framework of what you already do. The masterpiece cards are additional things, yes, but they function as resource collection in the income turn, which is already something that players know how to do. And then the capital city mats are already something that you have to do. It's a spatial little puzzle with your income buildings and your landmarks. But now you have other considerations to, think over whenever you plan where to put stuff. Increases depth, doesn't really increase complexity. That's how it does it. Why might you like it? If you like Tapestry, this is more Tapestry. And also it adds some changes to it that I think could really give you longevity in the game. I think the advanced capital city mats are a big win. I think the additional track is a possible good win. I would need to see it more, and that's something that I'll probably bring up in my final thoughts. But the masterpiece card specifically, additional ways to collect resources and to part of the smart tactics of Tapestry is finding ways to make early investments or sound investments that are going to reap you benefits more than one time, multiple times over before the game is done. That's how you really start to ramp up your points, which is the point of the game, is to get the most points. So I think that's a smart thing, that it allows you to find other ways to invest in your engine and your track advancement as the game goes on. So I think that was a smart choice, and I think that's one reason why players may like it. Another reason is that the landmark miniatures, which this is pretty empty. I've actually got this out on my table because me and my wife have played it, and we're going to play it again. But if you can maybe see that the landmark miniatures that come in here are actually, most of them are from other Stegmaier title worlds, other game universes that exist. So you've got Pendulum, Between Two Castles, Scythe, Euphoria, Viticulture. So that's another cool thing that players might like, or is the connection to other titles that they maybe appreciate, because it seems like Stegmaier Games has a decent amount of followers or people who appreciate the game that end up liking other titles from the catalog as well. So that's one reason I like it. One reason to maybe not like it is for the opposite of why I said it can be beneficial, is sometimes people, when they see an expansion, they want something to fix the game or make it from a good game to a great game. I think that Scoundrels of Skullport is an essential expansion. I don't think Arts and Architecture is an essential expansion. I think it gives you more to decide and more to think about. I think the advanced capital city mats are probably the most interesting part of it, with a close second being the masterpiece cards and the inspiration tiles, and then also just adding more of the civilizations. But it's not an essential expansion. It doesn't take a game that you're like, man, this is solid, but I just switch. Ooh, perfect. That's what you added. That's what I think this game needs. I think it's the recipe for, an evergreen title. I don't think Arts and Architecture does that for Tapestry. I think that it's a very solid addition, and I think that maybe adding some bits from this and some bits from the Plans Employs, and maybe if there's other expansions down the line, I think people could slowly start to craft their perfect Tapestry, experience through small bits from all of these different add-ons. But I don't necessarily think that if someone wants to play Tapestry, I would say you have to add Arts and Architecture because you just don't want to play without it. And I think that that's probably in the dislike category of why someone might not want it. If they don't feel like it's essential, they don't want to necessarily add it. So that's in the dislike category, or why you might not like it. Final thoughts. I think that Tapestry continues to be a very satisfying two-player experience for me and my wife. I've played it once at 3-player and I enjoyed that. I really would like to try it at 4 and 5-player to see how that interaction is and how certain tracks play off of each other more or seem more valuable the higher the player count. I do have one area that I just isn't specific to this expansion, but is what I think when I'm playing Tapestry in general, We've probably played it close to about 10 times now. And my wife and I don't think we have found a combination of tracks stronger than military exploration. When you are moving between both military and exploration, and those are the two tracks that you invest in without really focusing on the others, it has seemed to be the strongest combination and the most like obvious place to, direct your resources and your time. We've made attempts to experiment and try with other tracks, just not to the same success we've had when comboing the military and the expansion or exploration. Those two tracks just seem to really tie together nicely and make a very strong resource gathering progression track for players to go up. It's how I got my high score. It's how my wife has got her high score. So I'm just kind of curious if, as we explore other civilizations and as we continue to try out more of Tapestry, if that continues to feel to be the case, where it's those two tracks are the ones that you should do. If that's the case, if we find that to be true after again and again and again playing through the game, Tapestry will maybe lose a little bit of luster for us. But right now, we're still very satisfied exploring the civilizations. How do they function? How deep do you want to go into the civilizations' powers versus strategizing on the board itself? It's a solid experience so far. And first impressions are, I like the expansion. I like what it adds. I'm interested to see how pivotal the masterpiece and inspiration tiles become and how much we enjoy these advanced city mats. So yeah, first impressions are good, leaning towards curiosity for long-term benefit. And then we'll see what happens when we get to a full review after a couple more plays. Timestamp for all of the timestamps I may have missed. And another timestamp for good measure. Peace.